Welcome back to the Eagles Insight Podcast. This is episode 8, Delegating for Success. But many leaders I work with struggle to keep up with their calendars. There's just so much on their plate, a huge workload, and there aren't enough hours in the day to get everything done. So when I ask them to see their calendar, I usually can tick off 5 or 6 things a week that they shouldn't be doing themselves. Being overwhelmed by tasks as a leader is a result of a couple of possible shortfalls. Like you just don't have enough troops, which is an indictment of your hiring system, and you don't have the right people that you can trust, which is an indictment of your training system. And if you just won't let things go, that's an indictment of your leadership mindset. If your problem's a hiring system or your training system, well, you know where you need to focus your efforts, and that might take a minute. But if it's you, well, that's something you can fix right now. Yeah, I know letting go can be uncomfortable. General Mattis used to say that you should delegate to the point where you're uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable, you probably haven't given away enough. But it really comes down to trust, right? Does the employee have the maturity and the training and the resources and the competence to accomplish the task? And do they have the right mindset? Now, when we're talking about delegating, and it's not so much about the nitty-gritty mechanics of it, about the mindset of delegating. But I will cover the mechanics of it pretty quickly here. So there's 5 things that you really want to pay attention to in the mechanics of delegating. And it's pretty straightforward. First, keep track of who you delegate things to. I can't tell you how many meetings I walk out of. Somebody says, yeah, this has got to get done. And somebody says, yeah, let's get it done. And nobody puts a name against that, and nobody records who signed up for what. How in the world are you going to hold people accountable for what they signed up for in a meeting if you don't track it? You got to track everything that you delegate. Second, you always want to make sure you give them a good description of what right looks like. When you're finished with this project, here's what it's going to look like. If you don't, Brene Brown calls it paint right. Paint what right looks like. If you don't have that conversation and they can't say it back to you what it looks like at the end, they probably don't understand it well enough to be on their own. Third, have them brief back the plan. How are you going to accomplish this? How are you going to take over this responsibility? What's your plan for doing it? Fourth, agree to deadlines and interim updates. Right then, when you assign the task, I need this by the end of the month, and let's meet on the 15th to make sure you're on track. Whatever it is, you both agree to it at that moment, put it on your calendars, and that way you have an accountability mechanism built in. And then number 5, and this is overarching, you have to hold them accountable. Too many leaders, like 70% of leaders, struggle with accountability. You have to be able to hold your people accountable. So agreeing to those deadlines and having them brief in their plan, you have a mechanism for accountability. So now I want to focus more on why you should delegate and what you should delegate and to whom. First of all, why? Well, first of all, it's going to multiply your effectiveness. Just adding people to your roster is additive. If you were just another individual contributor, congratulations, you're great at that. I'm sure that's why you got promoted. But you as a leader should be multiplying your effectiveness, and that is done through delegation. That is done by directing action and not doing it yourself. Not to say that leaders can't jump in and do things. Of course you can. Troops love it when you're willing to also get in there, but if you're spending most of your time doing individual tasks or supporting the team in their individual tasks, you aren't doing your leader tasks. Second, stay focused on the right things. Your leader tasks, the strategic stuff, the strategic relationships. If you delegate, you're freeing up your time to stay focused on those things. Third, delegating develops people. Look, if you give people more responsibility, they're either going to sink or swim. If you've prepared them, if you've resourced them, if you guide them and you stay on top of them, they will develop into better employees and leaders of their own right. Unless you have that step in there, they are going to continue to be maybe marginally better individual contributors, but that's not going to be multiplicative in your growing business. Next, you can reduce your stress. By the way, if you have great people doing great things and you don't have to do them, and they're getting to the point where they've proven they don't even need to be supervised on this, what do you have to worry about? Your stress has gone down. They have a proven track record of accomplishing the mission without your presence. How great is that? Finally, I think if you're talking to your people about how they're accomplishing things, they may find a better way. They may give you better feedback about what's happening in your organization and how you're accomplishing the mission. They may have different perspectives that are really, really useful to the growth of your company. You're not going to get that if you don't trust them. Now, what should you delegate? Look, it can't just be the stuff that you don't want to do in your calendar. Like, okay, I don't like taking out the garbage, so we should take out the garbage. Yeah, that's a simplistic thing, but too many people, when they start to delegate, they just go like, well, I don't really like going to that meeting. Let's send somebody else to that. Or I don't like this. And that's not really going to be useful to the people you're delegating it to. You're not using that as a developmental tool. Yes, you're freeing up your time, and there's some usefulness in that. but think strategically about the delegation, how you are assigning things. Now, we love the Eisenhower matrix, right? General Eisenhower, somebody asked, how are you so effective at leading so many different complex organizations? He said, well, listen, I have a 2x2 matrix. Anything can be solved with a 2x2 matrix. Eisenhower's matrix says, look, things are either urgent or they're not, and they're important or they're not. And if they're urgent and important, that's something I should do right now. It's urgent and not important, I should delegate that. I should give that to somebody else to do. If it's urgent and it doesn't require my personal attention, someone else is doing it. Now, if it's not urgent and it's not important, you just get rid of the task. Why are we doing it if it's not urgent, not important? The final category, if it is important but not urgent, then you get to decide when to do it. That's something you schedule. But those urgent and not important things are delegation. That's the fodder for delegation. Get somebody else to do those things. So you should personally, as a leader, do only those things that only you can do. As a senior leader, you should be working on strategic issues and strategic relationships and complex tasks, right? You should not be working on the mundane day-to-day thing. The routine tasks, if they're a clear recipe or an algorithm to it, those are things that somebody else should be doing for you. Technical tasks, if you might have specialty people within your organization that can do technical tasks better than you. Maybe you're the best technician, but you're only going to be the best technician and not the best leader if you're spending all your time doing technical tasks. By the way, if people get to do them over and over again and you trust them with them, they may grow into that and they may be even better than you. If you're doing project management, you may be overall responsible for the project, but there are sub-projects that can be delegated. Those things that are going to take you away from seeing the whole project through because you're going down side quests, looking for little things to do and taking care of the small details. Yes, details are important. Find somebody to take care of those details for you. If you're doing administrative tasks or research tasks or problem-solving tasks, you're probably not focused on strategic issues. Those are things that can be delegated. If you're spending your time on Google looking up things and Wikipedia trying to put together some sort of science project to move your company along, that's something someone else can do for you. Free up your time to do those big things. The last category of things that I encourage people to let go of, to delegate to, are challenging tasks that can help your team members grow. People grow into challenges. So if you have something that's really difficult, you're like, I'm not sure about this one, and you've got somebody who's got potential of growing to the next level, give them something challenging to do. Help them grow in their abilities and their confidence. That's a great use of delegation to grow your people. Now, who are you going to delegate stuff to? I think there's an interesting allegory that helps me frame that conversation. Like in the late 1670s, there had been a great fire, they call it the Great Fire, in London, and burnt down half the town, including St. Paul's Cathedral. Christopher Wren was the royal architect. He was responsible for rebuilding St. Paul's Cathedral. And when he was checking on the cathedral and the progress of it, he came across these three guys who were laying bricks. And he asked the first guy, what are you doing? The guy says, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm laying bricks. Got it. But he goes to the second guy who goes, what are you doing? He said, I'm building a wall. Huh, all right. Two guys are doing exactly the same thing, but one guy just said, I'm just laying bricks. The other guy knows he's part of something bigger. I'm building a wall. All right. He knows a little something about why he's here, at least. He asked the third guy, so what are you doing? He says, well, I'm building a cathedral. It's a monument to the Almighty. And Wren looks at the guy, he's like, all right, this guy gets it. This is a guy that I can work with. All right. He really understands the context in which he's working. Now, I used to think as a leader that it was my responsibility to help every bricklayer out there become a cathedral builder. Like everybody should have a career path and I should be moving them up and I should be motivating them. And when I find somebody who's just like, you know what, I don't want to be a cathedral builder. I don't want the kind of responsibility. I don't want the kind of livelihood. I just want to lay bricks. And I would be disappointed. And I would take it. I was like, come on, you want to be bigger and better. I no longer believe that. I think that there are bricklayers that are happy being bricklayers. They have no interest in being a wall builder or a cathedral builder. I think it's a leader responsibility to find out if there's greater capacity and desire to move beyond bricklayer and then help them see the bigger picture and fulfill their potential. But it's not my job to define potential for someone. It's not my job to give a career path to somebody whose only interest is a transactional relationship with the business. You want 10 bricks today? Give me 10 bucks. You want 12 bricks today? Give me 12 bucks. It's transactional. And they're fine with that, and I'm fine with that because I need the bricks put in place and I need them done correctly. There are many happy bricklayers. We should not think of them less, but we should also not expect them to grow into cathedral builders. Now, what about the cathedral builders? You have some of those in your organization. These are people who just see the potential of the organization and are going to help you get there. I love models. I love thinking in terms of models. There's one that I really like. It's the Hersey Blanchard Situational Leadership Model. And this talks about situational leadership how you have to change your leadership style depending on who you're dealing with. And if you've got somebody who needs a lot of direction, then you're going to be in the directing mode. If they need support, you're going to be in a supporting mode. If they don't need a whole lot of direction or support, then you're delegating. But if they need a lot of support and a lot of direction, you're coaching. So this is a great model to think about how you have conversations with the different people in different stages of their growth as professionals. Now, I've superimposed the Christopher Wren story onto the situational leadership model, and I kind of like the way it turns out. So if you're dealing with somebody with low competence and low maturity, and you find themselves, you have to be very direct with them. Right, these are your bricklayers, and you have to give them lots of instruction, and they have to be supervised, or you have to give them lots of supervision. It doesn't have to be you, but somebody has to supervise. It's highly directive. It's not really that supportive, right? I don't really think that they need a ton of support down there. What they need is a lot of direction and supervision. They're focused on task delivery, right? They're less focused on personal needs. They just need step-by-step instructions and a clear explanation of the consequences of non-performance and supervision. Right? You can do this with people who are either motivated to move up, but are at that stage. They're a novice or an unmotivated worker. Right? As maturity and competence grows, leaders do more coaching rather than directing, right? We may make a switch to coaching. We start to discuss the decisions with a worker, right? We don't quite trust them fully yet, so the leader, still has to make decisions, but the worker now has input into how the job's going to be done, right? That's where autonomy comes in. And this autonomy, by the way, it's a great component. It's a key component of motivation, right? We'll talk about that in a future session. Coaching, that next stage up, workers who are willing but unable to perform a task on their own or have lost confidence in their ability to perform, right? Here we're focused on increasing the confidence in their skills so that they can take on more responsibility. That's that support piece. That's why support is so high on this graph. We're focused on increasing that confidence in them so they believe in themselves. And as maturity and competence grows, the leader becomes more supporting. Conversation about what needs to be done and how it is accomplished. Well, they work differently, and the worker now is capable of making decisions on their own after discussing it with the leader. Now, as we move over to supporting, right, this is where your cathedral builders are. High support, low direction. They don't need a whole lot of supervision. They need our support. They need coaching. They need mentorship. They need guidance, right? We need to listen, praise, high level of interaction between leader and follower. We build trust most here, right? It's high level of trust to achieve all the day-to-day tasks, and we encourage and motivate them. So those are the kinds of things that we have to be comfortable with, people being in different stages, and how much direction and how much support do we give them. In each of those places, we need to understand, we need the worker to understand, right? The mission and the vision and the values of the organization. The worker has skills and maturity to accomplish the mission unsupervised, and the worker has dedication and mindset to see things through. Now, the final quadrant over there, the delegating quadrant, it's the least directive, least supportive, has most autonomy for the worker, and that's when you fully trust people in their maturity and their competence. You know they're trained, they're resourced, they're capable of functioning on their own. This is where real empowerment comes from. This is where your vacation comes from. So when you're in that delegating mode, it's really hands-off, right? It's a lot of encouragement, it's a lot of autonomy, and this is where we have to take a caution. We have to guard against overloading that subordinate, right? We got a great performer, let's dump it all on them. We have to be careful about that. The other thing we have to be careful of is when we first hand it off, we want to watch over their shoulder and make sure they're doing it right. That's going to erode confidence and trust. They're not going to love having somebody over their shoulder. And look, we've already proven that they're capable. Why don't you trust? Now, when you got the city builders, I call them, those are the people in that delegating, they're going to have a lot more responsibility. And some leaders will let go of responsibility. They'll let go and delegate those things. Now, as leaders, we're still accountable for stuff, but we can delegate some responsibility. But you also have to delegate the authority. It's so important to tie the authority with the responsibility. You can't hold somebody responsible for something they have no authority to fix. You are setting people up for failure if you don't give them the authority that matches the responsibility. You're in charge of everything that happens in this room. Okay, great, I'm in charge. But you can't discipline people, you can't hire, you can't fire, you can't reward, you can't incentivize. It makes it very difficult. You've set them up for failure if you don't hand off, delegate that authority at the same time you're delegating the responsibility. And those should be explicit, right? You should not have to guess. You should make sure that's in writing, or at least spoken very, very clear, so everybody understands what level of authority people have. Look, people don't fit neatly into boxes, right? These are models. Look, all models are wrong. Some are useful. I hope this one's useful. I think that there's no definitive line between being a wall builder and a cathedral builder. I think that there's a spectrum, and that the amount of coaching and supporting that you give people is based on where they are in that spectrum. So you have to, as a leader, listen to people, watch them, attend to this idea, and pose this model on your observations so you can say, well, where is this person in their journey and how should I interact with them based on where they are? So when you think about your work and your leadership role, what could you do with a few extra hours in a week, right? So what are you going to delegate tomorrow, right? Take a moment, reflect. One task you can hand off to someone else. Remember, it's not about giving up control. It's about empowering your team and unlocking your full potential as a leader to do those things that are going to help your organization the most. Delegation's not about giving up control. It's about freeing up your time. It's about focusing on strategic work. It's about developing your subordinate leaders and your troops to be better at delivering what your mission is, achieving your vision. But carefully considering what to delegate and to whom and how to provide support, you can create a more productive and engaged and successful team. Delegation is a powerful tool. It can transform your leadership style, help you achieve your goals. So don't be afraid to let go. Trust your team, empower them, and watch them soar. Thanks for listening.